All right, so I do have a tool that you can use. This is a web address. If you do bit.ly/Hawaii trees, no upper cases, it's all lowercase. If you plug that into your phone, it's going to pull up. And if Morgan actually wants to click on it, this is going to take us out to a browser. You can do it on your computer as well, but it works on your phone. So you kind of have a pocket ID now of the cards that we have in each of our groups, where we don't have the resources to make one for every single person, although we hope we will get to that. This is now available on your phone. So you can scroll in to see each species. It's in alphabetical order. So hopefully this will help you when you're out in the field, or if you're just out without mapping with us, to give you a better idea of some of the species. I think there's about 60 on here. I keep trying to add to it. Again, not even the tip of the iceberg for the trees in our urban areas, but hopefully that helps you when you're on the field. And I know that's something that we've been trying to do better with. So that's a good resource. I also, do you want to just keep it doing that, Morgan? We'll try and get it full screen again. I know that there's some details on those trees that you'll want to see. Maybe press escape. If you press escape and then try to go back to it.
There we go, thank you.
We've done it enough to kind of know the tips and tricks. So yeah, so you have that tool able to access for those trees that they're on the tip of your tongue. You just need to see a picture or to know the name of it. But when we report unknown trees, we use our unidentifiable tree forms. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because if you go to the next slide, what we ask to include are really tree observations. It's not just a photo. We're asking, what do the leaves look like? What's the bark like? What are some attributes of that tree? Because saying the tree's tall, has brown bark, green leaves is really hard for us to know what we're talking about. And it's hard for you to start identifying trees if you're not able to pull apart the little tiny personalities that each tree has. So that's what I'll focus on for the first part of this, is some of those identifying markers. All right, so getting into observational skills. Something I like to bring up, and what I heard Kevin Eckert say one time, is that trees are like people. If you have your friends standing a block away from you, it's really easy for us to identify out who it is. That's Morgan, that's Wade, that's Larry. But I think with trees, we, because we don't see them as much, or maybe we don't pull them apart the same way we do with people, we're thinking, when you're looking off into the distance, you're going, there's a lot of trees, they're all green, different sizes. But then once you start knowing differences, even from far away, you'll be able to tell those trees apart. And I think a lot of you guys already have those skills available. So from far away, we're observing from a distance, you may already know. And again, oh, great. Yeah. I'm going to start looking at the chat a little bit. If you see a tree and you know it already, get your brownie points in. You can add it into the chat. But some of you may already know this tree. But if you get up a little bit closer, it's easier. But it might be difficult if you're not super familiar with these types of trees, what it is. So for example, when you look at this compared to this tree, if you're not super clear on which one's which, you might struggle with understanding, which is which. Great. Yeah, Larry said that one I just popped up was a pink Tacoma, but let's go back to this first one. We're now up closer to it and we're looking at the flowers. So maybe it's a lot different than the pink Tacoma. It might be a little bit easier to tell, right? And then even closer, we want to make sure that we're looking, and details are really key. So this is another key indicator, a giveaway of what this tree is. Yes, it's a Hong Kong orchid. All right, Francisco and Larry are in the lead here. Yes, I'm keeping a tally. No, I'm not. But anyway, so getting back to it, the Hong Kong orchid, they're planted commonly in our city. So you do see them, they flower almost all year round. And they are planted often because they are hybrids, and they have a very low weed risk assessment because they have to be cultivated. Right, yeah, and lots on Fort Street Mall. That's right down the street from me. So I see Hong Kong orchids all the time. I'm super familiar with them. They're not actually an orchid. But anyway, the point of this exercise being, take a look at these. If you're not super familiar with this, The flowers are very orchid-like, although it's not an orchid. You have those heart-shaped butterfly or lobed leaves. So even if you see a leaf on the ground, you might say, oh, I think I know what tree's around. And then jumping back, because I did show this one earlier, you can see maybe from far away it's difficult, but when you come up close, those leaves are super different. You don't have those lobe leaves. You have more of like a trumpet-shaped flower if they are flowering. And then from far away, the tacomas always look really dusty to me. They look kind of like you need to shake them off and see the green. So even with the white tacomas, they have that look from far away, even without the flowers. All right, so looking at some more observational skills. Again, this isn't for you to read all in one thing. It just shows that there's so many different types of attributes that you need to check out. So let's look at some more up close. All right, we're going to get into some leaf types. Again, you don't have to memorize, bipinnate compound, or anything like that. But leaf types are super important to know when you're looking at a tree, when your teammates are saying, what kind of tree is this? What kind of leaves do they have? They're single leaves or they're compound leaves, doubly compound leaves, and the difference between them. So sometimes it's kind of hard to tell. Single leaves, in this picture, it seems pretty easy, but let's take some real life examples of what these trees look like. So on the left, this is from a crepe myrtle. These are single trees because that axillary bud is just right on the node, right in the center, whereas the compound leaf in the middle and the doubly compound leaf on the right have the axillary bud at the very back of those really long fronds. So if you can start to tell the difference now, I always kind of get confused in my head going, okay, let's go back to the axillary bud, and then you'll know the difference. I'll come a little bit closer to these. So on the left, now we have the doubly compound, which is really feather-like, and then the compound leaves on the right. And does anybody have an idea just from these leaves what trees these might be? The right might be easier because we see them all over town. Really droopy leaves. Yeah. Francisco says poinsettia. That is the doubly compound. So if you go ahead and do a quick reveal, the royal poinsettia, and then the one on the right is actually a shower tree. So the Benjamin figs, I'm not even going to try and guess. I would think that they're singular, well, they're littler leaves. But anyway, if you guys might know more than me at this point on some of these trees. So let's look at these a little bit closer. All right, the rainbow showers. Now, if you kind of see, oftentimes you don't even really notice that they're compound because they're just all these kind of droopy shower. It reminds me of a shower or water falling down because the leaves come down in that sense. Also, yesterday, for those who were there, Caroline asked about the deciduous trees, and so I tried to add that in last night, just so there's going to be a little marker on each one of these too, if the trees are partially deciduous or not. All right. And these are hybrids. I know that most of you know this, but just a quick reminder and some other key details. So we're talking about leaves, but what else help us identify these trees? If they're not when they're flowering, it's easy. They look like rainbow sherbet, but when they're not flowering, they might just look like big green trees. And so the leaves are giveaways. When they are flowering, they have these bright flower clusters. The branches kind of droop down, as I mentioned, they're kind of rainy, and they don't have pods. If you have a golden shower tree with a rainbow shower tree next to each other and they're both not flowering, their golden shower tree might have the pods, and that's because it's not a hybrid. So that's a quick giveaway. Exactly, the big long pods on the rainbows, on the goldens. And then the other tree, the royal poinsettia, from far away, maybe a little bit more difficult. What are some markers here? And again, feel free to add in if you see characteristics of how you would describe this tree. I know I mentioned before, we have the feathery leaves. They're really, really fine. They're doubly compound. Some other markers on this tree, if it's flowering or not. We have those flat, woody, pointed, long, legume-like pods that pop out, as well as the flower clusters. And if you look at every single individual flower clusters, the pretty thing about these that I like is that there's one petal that's actually larger than the other. But yeah, there are several trees in our urban environments with big red flowers on them. So these are some markers to pull this one out. All right, just a little bit more focus. As I mentioned, sometimes it's harder to tell. We're looking at two different leaves. Looking at, again, there's two photos, but let's talk about the one on the right. Is that single? Is that compound? Is it doubly compound? And then the one on the left is a single leaf, but it's almost, broken up a little bit. And if you know the species, you can jump out and say it too. Okay, go ahead and give it away. Yeah, Schefflera tree on the right there. And these are, the one on the left is palmately single leaf. So the reason why I'm bringing these two up together is because they're both palmate, but very different in the word. So palmate because it does look like a palm. And then the one on the right is a palmately compound leaf. So what we're looking at, that, octopus kind of tentacles of 8 different leaves, what looks like 8 different leaves, that's one leaf, one compound leaf that looks like a palm. Kind of interesting. Again, that palm, that's why we say that. So another good descriptor word. And bringing up Schefflera, because you see them all over the place, the octopus tree. From far away, if they have their flowers, they're pretty easily to identify, right? You have those distinct kind of octopus tentacles that stick out of the top. They don't always flower. The next thing that I can see right off the bat without even seeing flowers are those giant compound leaves that also kind of fold and look like octopus. And that bottom picture kind of, they're dangling down a little bit too. So I actually don't know if they're called octopus because of the flowers or because of the leaves. And they're also epiphytic. So you'll be able to, when you're mapping another tree without these compound leaves, sometimes you see these giant compound leaves sticking out of it. And that's because these trees, the seeds, when they drop into other trees, if they get into a hole in that tree, they will start growing and taking over that tree. So they're actually pretty highly invasive. If you look at that weed risk assessment score, it's a 13, which is probably, I think it only goes up to 15. So they are in our urban environments a lot. We don't recommend you planting them at all, but we do see them quite a bit. All right, some more observational skills and looking at the leaves, but also other things. This one might be a giveaway, but the most distinct thing to me on this plant is the leaf because it is such a pretty shape. It has heart-shaped leaves. So let's look at some of those other indicators. So the leaf isn't just heart-shaped. Yeah, it has some other distinct characteristics to that leaf. It has those light veins. So the veination is something else you can describe. So if you have, a pretty regular round leaf, but it has deep veins or light veins, or maybe the veins are protruding, that's something to note as well. On the Milo tree, it has these light veins and a pointed tip, which sometimes you have a heart-shaped leaf, but it comes down to a little bow at the bottom. Also, you have those wrinkly deflated seeds and flowers, which they don't always flower, but they have those really pretty papery yellow flowers. This is a Polynesian introduced tree, but it's also fairly weedy and will grow quite well anywhere. You usually, I think, taking a jog around Ala Moana, you see them in the ditches because they just want to grow everywhere. All right, so I mentioned the heart-shaped leaf, and you don't have to memorize these words of it's ovate or it's elliptical, but just to give you an idea of the so many different shapes and so many different ways that you can describe something, whether it be a linear and long, whether it be kidney shaped, whether it be diamond shaped. There's a lot of different ways that you can describe the leaves. And if you have a good idea, when I see a palmately compound leaf, I automatically think of Schefflera. I mean, there's so many other ones, but once you start knowing the leaf shapes, it might be easier to pull out your trees that you see often. All right, so there's a few things to see on this one, maybe a dead giveaway, but what I started noticing is I can notice this tree from far away, but when I'm up close to it and when I saw the leaves up close, and someone just showed me a leaflet, I didn't know what tree it was because I was so used to identifying from far away that I wasn't paying attention to all of their characteristics up close. So if no one puts this in the chat, we have some issues. These are everywhere and they are really beautiful trees. They're not native to here, but they do have some characteristics, including the long sticky seed pods that usually get stuck on your shoes if you're walking underneath them, and these really pretty small powder puff-like flowers that, again, these trees do not always flower, so so it's hard to only identify from there, but they are really pretty. So these are flowers, and just kind of some more information on them. There's about 24 tiny pink flowers with really long stamens on that powder puff. That's what makes it look like that, and it is a flower. And that's the monkey pod. If I didn't say that, I just want to make sure to vocalize. All right, some more observations. You know, we've already talked about flowers, but there's also fruits that you can see, as well as those seeds and pods. So again, you cannot rely on just identifying plumerias from their flowers or from, you know, a mango tree just because it has mangoes, because that is not always an indicator. We are really lucky here in Hawaii that our trees do flower more often than other areas. And then I think this past year, I think mangoes were fruiting at a really weird time. So I was seeing mangoes when I don't usually see them. But would you know an avocado tree if it wasn't hanging full of avocados? That kind of thing. Although we don't have to, I don't have those examples in here because you don't often see avocado trees in our city areas. Although maybe we should one day. Okay, so we've come to my trivia game. You guys are already throwing in examples into the chat and what you think that it is, and everyone's been right up to this point. So we'll see if I can stump you on any of these. So you can either write it into the chat, or if you want to unmute because you're super sure and want to be the first one to shout it out, do so. So let's get into it. All right, so we have Truco or Hauliko. Who is who? So we have the photo on the left that's showing, has a little knife to show the size of those seeds. Francisco thinks that the left is Truco. That would make the one on the right Hauliko. Okay. All right, so we think we have a consensus. Yeah, you guys are right. So I put another picture. If you do one more click, it shows one of the most distinctive ways to tell, at least for me, are the leaves. If you can look and see the leaves, Hauliko is really rough, almost like paper. What is that, scratch paper or whatever, rough leaves, and the Truco is these shiny green leaves that don't have that same consistency. So that, to me, without the flowers, without the nut subs, because sometimes I get really confused, are, you know, I'll look at the leaves. But the other components are also really different. So the flowers are actually kind of a different color. You have more of a you have the cluster and tubulars that are really darker. They're a lot darker than the Truco, but if you don't know how light the orange on the co is, you really wouldn't be able to tell. And you actually see a little bit more of the Hauliko in our communities, also called ginger trees. All right, next one. We have false olive or Madagascar olive. I put another giveaway. I didn't just show you the olive-like seeds, but I gave the leaves, so you can see the difference between the leaves too, if you have an idea of one. Have I stumped you? This one's tough because we don't see these too often. They're not talked about that much. Ha, I've stumped you. I'm making a note of it. Going once, going twice. Okay, there we go. The one on the left is the false, and then we have the Madagascar. So let's look a little bit closer at these two species. Apologize again, the writing's really small, but these are the same kind of little clippets that you get on your species ID card, so I wanted to include it. The false olives, they have those pointed leaves. So again, if you're just looking at the leaf, they have the pointed tip leaves, whereas the Madagascar olives are more rounded and a little bit more leathery. Their barks also differ, and the seeds differ as well. I think they both resemble olives, but they're a little bit different in color when they're on the ground. And one more note with the false olive If you see in that far right picture of the false olive, there's a different type of leaf. The juvenile leaves are very different from when they grow up. So you often see the juvenile leaves at the base of the tree. That's not an epiphytic plant. Those are just baby leaves. The juvenile leaves look a lot different. All right. All right. So I have 3 different trees, all yellow flowers. This might kind of seem easy. You know, the one on the right looks obviously different from the middle one, but if you talk to a person on the street and you ask them, you're really not thinking specifically when you're looking at yellow flowers. You're just thinking the tree with the yellow flowers. But that's not the case. Yeah, so we have a golden shower on the right, but any others? The other 2 are more difficult until you look at the leaves. All right, we have a guess for the middle. Anyone want to corroborate Francisco with a bee still tree in the middle? Buttonwood middle. All right, we got some competition. All right, let's give it away. No bee still in this, but yeah, interesting. It does look like a bee still. So the one on the right, the gold trees, are the one that's turned into the big champagne glass of yellow flowers. Silver trumpet in the middle, golden shower. We'll look at these species a little bit closer as well. All right, let's look at the gold tree first. So those leaves, which I should have done a close-up of those leaves because it is a yellow trumpet-shaped flower, which is really similar to the trumpet tree that we'll go over next, but the leaves are a lot different. The leaves on the other one were really, really long and cylindrical, whereas this one's not. These just have kind of diamond-shaped pointed leaves. Really easy to tell when they're a giant fiery yellow tree in the middle of our city. I think those are some of the most obvious to point out, but part of the year they're just green big trees as well. So having to know those leaves is important, as well as the light brown reddish bark. I think the bark is another telling sign. It's kind of a red bark. All right. Oh, I did put one over the leaves. Clever, Shannon. See, those leaves are not those long cylindrical like ones. I think that's a compound leaf as well. Palmately compound. All right, silver trumpet that we said kind of looked like silver buttonwood, kind of looks like a bee still. The silver trumpet has these long cylindrical leaves. They come in bushels. The trumpet shaped flowers come in bushels. The bark is a lot different than, say, the gold tree. It's a lot more rough. And moving on from this is the tumbleweed species. I have another who's who when looking at this other species. So take a look. Oh no, golden shower, but we can buzz past this one if you don't mind to get to the other one because we already went over rainbow shower. Okay, so we have the koas, who's who. We have the native endemic koa, and we have a Formosan koa. Koas might be harder to know because we don't see them too often in our urban environments. All right, we got some guesses. All right, let's give it away. Perfect. Yeah, we have the Formosan koa on the left, the acacia koa on the right. I don't give an example of the acacia koa any closer. So just kind of as we look, you can tell that those fuzzy flower balls are a lot lighter and bigger on the acacia, as well as the leaves are a lot bigger on the acacia koa compared to the Formosan. And those seed pods, those twirly seed pods on the Formosan gives it away as well. So this resembles our koa, but it has a lot smaller leaves, like I mentioned. So far away, it just kind of looks like a big bushel, but up close, you get into those and see it. These are pretty invasive as well. They're on the Reed risk assessment. They're a 10, so they do really well in our environment, but sometimes it's a hazard to have that happen. All right, so this is we just looked at the Formosan koa. We looked at the trumpet tree. Who do we think this one is on the right? Just asking about the right. And as you can see, we have in one of our team leaders, Tom, did a lot of these photos where he added in the measurement tool. So you can tell if that was a native koa, the leaf would be a lot bigger. It's not this big, but This one is harder to tell because they're pretty similar in size. So what do we think? Give you a hint, friend. Yeah, yes. I was gonna say, Francisco already said it because it did look like that last one. So go ahead and give it away. This is a bee still tree. So just looking at these compared to each other, you can see the bee still has a lot shinier, darker, vibrant green leaves, and they're not super sickle shaped. They're a little bit longer, kind of like grass. And then if you look at the flower right there, it's a trumpet shaped flower, which is actually probably more similar to the first one that we saw than the Formosan koa. But these are in our communities, long narrow leaves, trumpet shaped flowers, and all parts of this tree are poisonous, so don't lick it, which I know some of you are doing. Kidding. Okay, so next game. These are both quote unquote Kamani trees, which is which? Obviously very different flowers, obviously very different leaves, in the way that, one's alternate, one's kind of the compound cluster. Larry and Francisco are getting it. They're beating all of you guys. That's good though. Yeah, so go ahead and give it away. We have what we call the Kamani tree on the left and the false Kamani on the right. So let's take a look a little bit more. All right, so first the Kamani tree. This is, it's not native, which it kind of sounds like it could be, but it's not. And we see it in our communities quite a bit. It almost has those Madagascar olives looking seeds, and the flowers are extremely distinctive. But again, don't just focus on the flowers. But compared to the next one, if we go into the false Kamani, which I actually don't know why it's called the false Kamani here, because they don't look too similar. They have a very different flower arrangement. You see the inflorescence in the right. They don't look at all like the Kamani, and then their leaves will turn red, and their seeds, which they're also known as a tropical almond tree, they have the almond shaped seeds. So that's another thing that gives it away. All right, we have a few more who's who if you want to try and catch up. These might seem obvious, but they're both trees with red flowers, both tulips. Tulips, not a real tulip. We like to steal other plants' names when we name trees. All right, we have some guesses. Tulip wood on the left, perhaps. African tulip on the right, perhaps. All right, go ahead and give it away. That is true. We have tulip wood on the right, on the left, African tulip on the right. We plant a lot of tulip woods in our city, so I wanted to include that in here. You might see them often, so let's take a closer look. Here's a closer look at the tulip wood. The flowers are pretty distinctive in clusters, and the thing that usually gives it away to me are those seed pods that drop down, and you'll see them laying across Hotel Street, for instance. Really, I think they're really pretty, but some people think that they're rubbish. They don't want to step on them, but I think they're nice in the cities. They do well in cities. And the African tulip. So if you are focusing on the weed risk assessments, the last one was a -4, no real risk to becoming invasive, whereas the African tulip is a 14, which I think is the highest we've seen so far. So has a very high tendency, it is invasive in our environments, but they are so pretty and we do see them quite a bit. So you might map them often, but are these also have another name and I can't remember it, something with a claw. If somebody knows, maybe you can put it in the chat. But again, a lot of different trees have a lot of different common names. We use African tulip because the city uses African tulip. And one of the indicators, they have compound leaves that have deep veins in the leaves, as well as these vibrant flame flowers that you see from the freeway even. All right. Oh, good. I thought I had a few more, but I wanted to be cognizant of time. So thanks for playing. Those who did, we'll send you the award for those who got the best answers. I don't have any words for you, but hopefully that helped a little bit when comparing. I know oftentimes even if you're doing the flashcards and you're going, I got it, I know all the trees, and then you see two and you're going, Oh my gosh, I really don't got it. I got to go back and check because there are so many that from, an untrained eye look very, very similar. It is until you start getting down to the details, just like with friends. Oh, they have blue eyes, they have this, those kinds of things that you start actually paying attention. All right. That's me right there in a tux, by the way, if you couldn't tell. Okay. So if we get down to it, we've done the species boot camps. We're looking at a tree we still don't know. We have tools that you can use. So first we have our tree ID cards that each team has on hand, so you can flip through them. Also, this pocket ID that I created might be helpful just on your phone, so you're not all having to gather around one deck of cards, which hopefully we'll be able to get out more for you. Same trees in the online version as the ones in hand. Also using Google, but be very careful of misinformation because depending on what site it's saying, there's different names, there's, false identifications. But if you have a pretty good idea and you just it's on the tip of your tongue, you can always plug that into Google. Because everyone here has already gone through the training, you have your manual. And if you remember in the manual, there's a whole bunch of listings with all of this detailed information there as well. You can always use that. I included this. We have the Pacific Islands Select Tree, and I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this yet. I know we've mentioned it quite a bit. This isn't an identification tool. It's a tool to help you be able to select a tree for the area you're in. And you can select based off of, I want a tree with yellow flowers, or I need a tree that has high salinity because I'm right next to the water. It'll then pull up trees that help. But if you have a good idea of, I think this is, this tree has yellow flowers and this is exactly what it is, you can also plug it in that way and help you kind of narrow down your options. And this project that we actually helped support this past year is geared towards Pacific Islands, specifically in Hawaii, which is really helpful because a lot of times the tree identification tools we see online are geared towards mainland species, which our forests are completely different. So that's a pretty cool tool to use. And then we have the unidentified tree form. So that's the other thing that we would need to go into. So just talking about how to report unknown trees. When in doubt, mark unknown. I know you can put in, if you know the species. I know for me, ficus. I usually can't get it too close to species on a few of them, but I know it's a ficus, so I can put in ficus species. But if you're looking at a tree that you really don't know, mark unknown. That helps us know when to go back and look at those trees. So if you mark unknown in the species area, we get kind of a little flag to say these are the trees that are unknown and these are the primary ID numbers. And then if you add in any maybe guesses, you're like, we know it's either this or this, put those into the comments, but also fill out this tree form because that helps us with all of those observational markers that we just talked about. So on this form, each team leader has these. It's again asking for those kind of details, and you can get as detailed as you want. If you're super familiar with those names, that helps us out because usually we send it over to a botanist that's super familiar with that. And also, after you fill these out, your team leader will upload them to a form that then we have all of that information. And we do want to get better at this because we are noticing that we have quite a few unknown trees in our inventory, which is totally normal. And we, again, don't expect everyone to know every single tree, and we have hundreds. But that does start to skew our data because that when you plug that in, that helps us understand what the eco benefits are. It's different between species to species. So we'll start doing this a little bit better. And again, once you get out, hopefully you'll start to know your trees more as well. I'm getting rusty as I notice as well. Okay, so the last slide, actually go back one. I think we might have jumped. As you've seen in a lot of the photos that I already showed, we use that ruler to show size, and you guys, when you're out in the field, you have rulers and tapes and all this other stuff. So it'd be great if you are taking photos, which you should be if you don't know the tree, upload that into the Tree Plotter app, but maybe put up your diameter tape. When you flip it, it's just inches. So you can put that up next to the leaves and different things like that. That would be super helpful for our folks that are going to be identifying the unknowns. And then this just says give as much detail as possible. So again, If you just take that picture, you might know right off the bat what it is. But a lot of times we've been seeing in our form for unknown trees, it's a picture from really far away. And we go, okay, got it, they'll get it. And we're going, oh gosh, it's just a green blur. So get up close and show those details if you can, because that will help us right off the bat. The picture of the leaf would be more helpful than the overall picture, but they're all really helpful. All right, so that's me done. I blew through that quicker than I was expecting. I appreciate you guys for going on that roller coaster ride. I'm sure it was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful. If you're interested in getting into more details on native versus introduced or anything like that, we can always try and get a little bit more deep. I'm always open to feedback. I think the species ID is probably the hardest out of all of them because it's a lot of memorization and we're doing it in 2D. It's a lot easier if we're walking around with a botanist or forester in the park. I think we get a lot out of that as well. So if you have any ideas on how to help us when training newbies that are going to hopefully be coming in this next year, we're always open to chat about it. I think before jumping into module 4, I'd love to get any feedback or questions that you have about some of those trees that we just went over. And it wouldn't just be me answering. We have some pretty good tree experts in this group that might know as well. I'd be interested to know, what do you struggle with most? Is it species ID? Is it specific species, specific areas? What helped you the most? Maybe you have a tip that might help somebody that's new or getting started. Morgan, do you have any tips? I know that you've been filling yourself with species ID knowledge.
Yeah, I was just trying to think what I've really been doing to get better at species ID. And I think a lot of it, besides getting out in the field and exposure, really is those tree ID cards helped me off in the beginning when I started volunteering. Even just looking at them in my free time to get a better idea of the differences, those like characteristics, Shannon, that you were talking about, that separate different trees. So reviewing that definitely helped me, and just getting out and walking. I walk my dog almost every day and try to take a different route so I can see the different trees in my neighborhood. And if I don't have a tree, I try to take pictures of them and go back home and try to either use the tree ID cards as a reference, or I did find there is a plant ID app that I have on my phone. It's not really geared for Hawaii, but sometimes it does give me at least a starting point to see what this tree might be, or just some certain other characteristics that can lead me in the right direction. But yeah, being a tree lover, I'm always out there trying to figure out what tree am I looking at.
Yeah. Who has a camera roll full of tree pictures? Is it just me? Okay, me and Morgan.
Not just you.
We're on our own.
Yeah.
I have a question from Melanie before on. We misidentified a number of trees in our neighborhood. If we're correcting the identification, do you need some sort of flag in the database for a QA review? Yeah, so if you know you misidentified them and now you know the correct species, you can always go in and adjust that. It'll show that it was adjusted. If you need somebody to review it, if you need an expert to jump on and see if it's correct, then yeah, we would definitely need a flag. So I think it would be harder to go back and fill out those forms now. But if you have the primary ID numbers, what you could do is maybe jot those down and send them over to Morgan. That's always helpful. And then we can pull them up in our own. Hopefully there's photos involved. But yeah, Morgan and I were just talking about, we might need to go back out into the field because some of the photos are unusable and we have no idea, and I don't think anybody would be able to tell. So we want to prevent that for the future, that we're keeping up with it as we go along so we don't pile up with hundreds of unknown trees at the end. Larry put in that on Amazon. Oh, cool. Forest Trees of Hawaii. That's great. There are a lot of really cool tree books. We actually helped promote and produce one that have a little bit more urban trees in it. You can get that one on Amazon, Common Forest Trees of Hawaii. There's multiple sources, again, because we have so many trees. Most of my library is full of native books where I have, but then I never see them when I'm in my urban environments. And then my urban environment ones often show species that are invasive and all of that. So yeah, anybody else have anything they want to share? Maybe what they've been doing over the past year, doing any walks, seeing trees they haven't seen before? We have a question of, is there someone we can ask to identify a tree for us? For sure. If, we've gotten just regular emails from our volunteers that say, we have this picture, can you help us? You can also put it into our Facebook group. I think a lot of you guys are on that. We don't utilize as much as we could, but if you do want to just upload it, then you have, a repertoire of all of our CFs that have the knowledge, including us, and we can help ID trees that way if that's something easy to kind of upload and you get a whole bunch of people's opinions on it. If it's out in the field and you need help identifying, I think that tree form we'll send it to our botanists and foresters to get that information. But if it's just like, if you have one right now and want to shoot us an email, Morgan and I are always on online that will help you out as well. So that we're always open to helping as much as we can. Again, I'm not an expert on it. I usually have to reach out to someone if there's the tree that is out of my, common 20 that I can pull out. But all right, great. Well, thank you so much for your undivided attention. I appreciate you guys going through that with me. Always open to questions after. Would love to hear your feedback. So we'll jump into module 4 for the next bit. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks, Shannon. Okay, so I am going to lead you through just a quick refresher of the tree plotter data entry process. A lot of the times when we're out in the fields, our volunteers are using tree plotter to be plotting the location of the trees that we are reporting for the inventory. A lot of what happens in tree plotter with the data happens behind the scenes with the team leaders and the staff. But we did make some changes that we want you to be aware of. So let's get started here. Okay, well, the software that we use is called Planet Geo. It is just a refresher, a geospatial platform that records the locations of our trees in addition to all the other data that we're collecting. It also has a really interesting feature and is part of the reason why we use this software, that it calculates the eco benefits. So the eco benefits are really awesome in being able to quantify the ecological benefits that these trees are contributing to our communities, whether it's in stormwater diversion or increasing property value, energy savings, the air quality benefits, and the carbon sequestration. It also helps when we're talking to people in our community to show more tangible numbers of why these trees are valuable, other than the aesthetics and other benefits that we enjoy from them. Okay, so logging into Tree Plotter, the website for Tree Plotter is still the same, pgcloud.com/Hawaii. Your username is the same kind of format for everybody. It's the capital letter of your first name, capital last name. The password, you should have changed your password by now, but just a reminder, if you do try to log into Tree Plotter and you're having some difficulties, reach out to us, either Shannon or myself via email, and we can get your username straightened back out. We definitely want to make sure that everybody has access to use Tree Plotter when you're out in the field, or if you wanted to look into the data yourself in your own time to see what it is that we have been doing with this. So this is just a quick screenshot of this desktop orientation of Tree Plotter. It does look a little bit different than when you're out in the field using it on your phone. We don't have to go through all of these features, but some things I just wanted to point out. Other than the add and move tree features that we are familiar with using in the field, the data and the hub feature up on the top left corner are just two other features that we can use to get those ecological benefits of either a single tree or a organization of a tree, and that data can be exported. If you ever had a need to want to put all the data in an Excel form, do research, or anything like that, that is a feature that Tree Plotter can do, so we can analyze the data that we are gathering. Okay, so yeah, like I said before, a lot of the times you guys are using Tree Plotter in the field. So being familiar with it on a phone is also important, since it is a little bit different of a layout than it is on the computer. Okay. So yeah, a lot of the tools that we're going to be using when we're out mapping is to add a tree to the inventory, entering the data in the details file, part of the tree, moving a tree if you're plotting one, and the location feature of Tree Plotter is not wanting to cooperate that day. Sometimes you'll plot a tree to end up in somebody's pool or on the other side of the street. If you can do it on your phone, or team leaders do it afterwards, moving that tree back into its correct location. So when maintenance or recheck goes back out to look at the tree in the field, we know more accurately where that tree is supposed to be. And also the delete feature is one that we use often if we get a little finger happy with clicking on the screen and adding too many trees, or a tree that just needs to be removed, which mostly isn't the time that we are deleting trees all that often. It's usually if it's a mistake, which is fine. Here. Okay, sorry, there we go. Okay, so one of the new updates that we have done since the last time we've been out mapping, the Tree Plotter list of features that we're recording, our assessments, are in the same order now as our data sheets. So when you're out in the field, everything should look symmetrical. We put it in a certain order. That makes more sense when we're out collecting the data. DSH and density and dieback are all kind of features that we can look at kind of around the same time. Same with ground spread and height. And live crown ratio, or kind of height and live crown ratio we talked about yesterday, being two of those measurements that you can take at the same time. So now those are reflected together both in Tree Plotter and on the data sheets. Okay, and just a reminder, one of the most commonly forgotten data fields in Tree Plotter was the location information and the wire management needs. These are really important for maintenance use. And like I said, when we're going back out into the field to recheck these trees later on after they're inventoried. So just a reminder with the wire management that we're looking for, if they're present, not present, and if they are present, if they are in conflict with the tree or not. If the wires are, I believe it's within 5 feet of the tree, within room that the trees could grow within a year, into the wires, we would consider that in conflict and something that we would want to record for our management needs. And with the changes to the Tree Plotter inventory data platform, we used to use 3 tabs when recording all the information that we're taking in the field. It used to be the tree information, location information, and management needs. Now the management needs features are now all together on the location information. So I'm not sure how much detail you can see on the slide on your computer, but the land use, location site, growth space, and wires are all within the location information tab. And these are all the details that we're collecting on the bottom of the data sheet here. So it's simplified now to just 2 tabs. Okay. And a quick review for the location information we talked about yesterday when we were recording that information. We're looking at the houses or any kind of buildings that we're mapping around in the perspective of workers or staff that's going back out to recheck these trees. So looking at this fruit tree, this would be considered on the right of the tree, given there was a street here and these are in the city right of way. yes, the fruit tree would be a location on the right, and the other tree would be on the left side of the building. Okay, before we celebrate that we've made it through this refresher training, any questions on location or tree plot or data entry?
I'll jump in to say, I know Morgan went over this about the desktop view, and maybe while we have more time inside, while we aren't mapping, even though we are kind of getting started, to utilize those features, the data hub and all of that information isn't public accessible. It's only accessible to our volunteers. So if you're a data, if you want to get into that and kind of see what certain trees in your area are doing, or look at the data that others have collected, that's available to you. So it's pretty cool to use if you're interested in doing like a quick little, not refresher since we haven't done it yet, but how to use that data or how to go through it. We'd be happy to show you that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. All right, well, thank you all for joining our refresher trainings and doing a quick review of all 4 modules that we include in our training series. If you have questions, Shannon and I will hang out for a couple of minutes. Feel free to add them in the chat box, or if you want to unmute and discuss amongst the group here, feel free. And like we closed out yesterday, just let us know if you are interested in getting back into mapping. We are looking to get restarted again in Kaneohe and Kaimuki sometime in April. And we'll be hearing from our team leads, and we want to know who's interested. So please let us know and ask questions if you have them.
Steve Francisco, he's asking, is the wire conflict within 5 feet? So yeah, I is it 6 feet? I think if it's 5 or 6 feet, I would say conflict, especially since a lot of our trees grow so quickly. There's never to err on the side of caution, even if it's a little further out, to say conflict, because it's not just if it's touching. Some of our trees grow over 2 feet a year, so if it's within that range.
Yeah.
I did
see that just Francisco's note about the HECO measurement of 10 feet. 5 to 10 feet was the range that I have been aware of. So yeah, if you've been recording within conflict within 10 feet, that's fine.
Another question about our recording session from yesterday. Yesterday we went over module 1 and 2, which was the assessment portion. We did record it. We're going to work on getting an email out to everybody, even folks that weren't able to join today, that you can go through it and, put us on double time if you want to get through it in an hour or in 30 minutes. Today we ended early, but I'm glad. Awesome. Great. Awesome. I'm glad, Jean, Larry, I see that you guys want to map again. We got you hooked. We'll bring you in. As the slide says, we're thinking Kaneohe, Kaimuki, based on our capacity with team leaders. But yesterday we showed a priority map of where we are currently mapping what's done and where we want to go, which is basically moving west a bit as well, because we want to make sure that we're doing our whole island. We'll start planning for the next year, and hopefully as things get back to safe. Yeah, double Ks. Finish them up. Kaimuki's almost done. Kaneohe's almost done.
Yeah, big one fire.
Yeah. So if we mapped Kaneohe, had to stop due to the pandemic, do we have to email to indicate we'll be rejoining? It would be awesome. I mean, you could just tell us right here, like Larry did. If you're interested, we are probably just going to send out general emails to everyone to make sure everyone has that information. We assume that if you've mapped in the past that you'll want to map again, unless you let us know it's something you're not able to do. Again, do what you need to do. But I'm going to assume that everyone wants to get back out there. But yeah, it would be great if you guys do shoot us a quick email that says, please keep me posted, because we'll know to let our team leaders know that you guys are interested as well. Awesome. Hi, Susan. I was wondering who Casey was. I was like, oh. Hi. Great. Ooh, looks like you have a garden in your house.
Lots
Great.
of
Well,
African violets.
ooh, oh, cool.
Oh, I've been looking for those all over.
Oh,
I've
they're
had a hard
just,
time finding them.
oh, yeah.
I was thinking that was
That's
your
great.
your food. I know some friends that have stacked up lettuce in their bedrooms because they're growing their own
Oh
stuff.
no, those are just stacked up African violet
Yeah,
plants.
they're beautiful.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. And thanks, Melanie. Thanks for joining.
Thank you,
Um,
everybody.
appreciate it. Francisco just put a plug out, is looking for Meyer lemons. If anyone knows of anybody growing, we're tree slangers. Great. We'll also kind of keep an ear and an eye out for that, Francisco. I know Meyer lemons are in demand. A lot of our growers are planting those for Arbor Day because those are the first
Yeah.
trees that go away, first trees that get nabbed, adopted.
They sure are. They're very popular, especially for Arbor Day.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your time today. I'm glad we wrapped up early. You can get started on the rest of your day and have a great weekend. And we will be in touch super soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.